My husband wanted me to donate my kidney to his mistress, so I gave it to his worst enemy instead. My husband always said he'd do anything to help people, but I never imagined anything included giving away my organs. We'd been married for 5 years, and Chris constantly talked about karma and good deeds. Every weekend he volunteered somewhere new while I worked overtime to pay our bills. When Chris's coworker Beatrice started dialysis, he came home with tears in his eyes. "She's dying," he said over dinner one Tuesday. 3 times a week hooked to that machine. Her kids watch her fade away. I felt terrible for her and asked if we could help somehow. That's when Chris set down his fork and looked at me with those puppy dog eyes. "Actually, there is something. You could get tested to see if you're a match." He reached across the table to hold my hand. Imagine giving someone their life back. I agreed to get tested because helping felt like the right thing to do. The results came back showing I was a perfect match for Beatrice's rare blood type. Chris practically glowed when he heard the news and immediately started planning. "This is fate," he kept saying. "You were meant to save her." The guilt trip started when I asked to meet Beatrice first. "Why do you need to meet her? Don't you trust me?" He compared me to his mother who'd donated bone marrow to a stranger. "Some people just have giving hearts," he'd say, while looking at me sadly. By week 3, Chris was leaving pamphlets about living kidney donation around the house. He'd highlight statistics about how donors live normal lives. During dinner, he'd mention Beatrice's kids and how they needed their mom. 8 and 10 years old, he'd remind me. They write her get well cards every day. Something felt wrong about how pushy Chris was being about this. I decided to look up Beatrice online to learn more about her situation. I searched every social media platform but couldn't find anyone named Beatrice at Chris's company. I even checked the employee directory when I dropped off his lunch. No Beatrice worked there at all. That Thursday, Chris was at his monthly poker game with friends. I needed our health insurance card for a work thing and searched his home office. In his desk drawer under some folders, I found medical documents for someone named Mavis Chen. The blood type matched mine perfectly, and she needed a kidney transplant urgently. My hands shook as I kept reading through the papers. Mavis was 28 and lived across town. There were photos of her with Chris at restaurants and movies, text messages printed out where she called him baby and talked about their future together. One message said, "Once your wife gives me her kidney, we can finally be together without hiding." I found hotel receipts going back 2 years and credit card statements for jewelry I'd never received. There was even a lease agreement for an apartment in Mavis's name that Chris co-signed. They'd been planning this for months while I worked extra shifts to cover our bills. Mavis had written, "She seems sweet but naive," in one text about me. Chris replied that I was too trusting and would never figure it out. They joked about how I'd be giving my kidney to my own replacement. Mavis said she'd send me a thank you card from their honeymoon. I could have confronted him right then and saved myself the pain, but I wanted them to suffer like they'd planned for me to suffer. So I called someone Chris despised more than anyone, his ex-business partner Damien. Chris had screwed Damien over in a deal 3 years ago, and they'd been enemies since. I told Damien everything and showed him the proof of Chris's affair. "My wife needs a kidney," Damien said slowly. "Same blood type as you." We made a plan that would help someone who actually deserved it. I told Chris I was ready to donate and schedule the surgery. He was so excited he took me out to celebrate. "You're doing something incredible," he said, not knowing how right he was. The morning of surgery, Chris kissed me goodbye and said he'd see me when I woke up, but I wasn't at the hospital he thought I'd be at. I was across town donating my kidney to Damien's wife Linda. She was a teacher who'd spent years helping underprivileged kids. Unlike Mavis, she actually deserved a second chance at life. Chris called me frantically when the hospital said I never showed up. "Where are you?" "Mavis is dying." He'd slipped up and used her real name in his panic. I was still groggy from surgery when I answered, "Who's Mavis?" I thought I was helping Beatrice. The silence on the other end was beautiful. Then came the explosion of rage and accusations. While he screamed, I texted him the screenshots of his affair. "By the way, I gave my kidney to Damien's wife. Remember Damien, the partner you betrayed?" I filed for divorce from my hospital bed. Mavis dumped Chris when she realized he'd been exposed and she wasn't getting a kidney. Chris lost his job when HR found out he'd lied about a sick coworker. I'm still recovering, but Linda sends me updates about her new life. Chris is probably somewhere explaining to his next girlfriend why his ex-wife gave her kidney to his enemy instead of his dying mistress.